già acceso? Lasciamo acceso?
Sì, sì, sì.
Ok, così qualsiasi cosa che dico la gente stanno ascoltando. Grazie.
No, adesso chiaramente.
Tocca. Così.
here in Florence. My name is Fabio Santeramo, and I'm a fellow at EY, and I'm delighted to introduce the panel, The Future of European Agriculture, Sustainability, Sufficiency, and Security. Joining us for the discussion today are Mauro Agnoletti, at my right, UNESCO Chair for Agriculture, Heritage, and Landscapes, Matthias Berninger, Executive Vice President of Public Affairs, Science, Sustainability at Badia, Jonathan Hepburn, Counselor at the World Trade Organization, Lauren Phillips, Deputy Director for Inclusive Rural Transformation and Gender Equality at the FAO, Janusz Wojciechowski, Commissioner for Agriculture at the European Commission. Last but not least, before start, let me remind, please, if you have any mobile, please tweet about the panel using the hashtag SOU2023. Now let me introduce the topic we're going to discuss today, which of course is about agriculture and European agriculture. So European agriculture is really undergoing a profound transformation that requires a strategic response. Particularly, we have seen a combination of events like climate change, violent conflicts, and the emergence of innovations that has created challenges, but also opportunities. So clearly, European leaders have to decide whether they want to outsource agricultural production or help the European industry in a way that is going to be more sustainable, sufficient, and secure. The choice will have a lot of implication for Europe, but I would say also for the whole world, in terms of employment, in terms of consumption. So it's very important to address those topics today for the implication that I said they're going to have in the world. So I would really open this session with a speech by the Commissioner. So I would kindly ask him to give his opening. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to thank the European University Institute for inviting me to take part in this year's State of the Union Conference. It is my great pleasure to join you. This year's theme, Building Europe in Times of Uncertainty, is well chosen. It is a theme that reflects our present surroundings. As you know, many famous buildings at Florence can be traced back to the Renaissance, a time of great creativity, but also great uncertainty. It is a theme that also reflects our present circumstances. In these challenging and uncertain times, we must seek ways to reinforce the future of society in Europe. When it comes to reinforcing the future of agriculture, I would like to set out 4 fundamental cornerstones upon which we can build our conversation today. Upon we can say 4S cornerstones: security, stability, sustainability, and solidarity. Security for all people, stability for farmers, sustainability for environment and climate, and solidarity with the rest of the world, taking into account the role of European agriculture in food security at the global level. Some reflections about the first cornerstone, food security. Thanks to the work of our farmers, we enjoy a safe supply of nutritious and high-quality food in the European Union. In recent years, however, the resilience of our food supply chain has been tested. First by the COVID pandemic, then by the impacts of Russia's illegal, unprovoked, and justified aggression against Ukraine. So far, our farmers have met these challenges and maintain food supply. However, this is not the case everywhere. From the many alarming figures contained in yesterday's global report on food crisis, we can take some simple facts. Too many countries face food insecurity. Too many people are at the edge of starvation. In the European Union, we have a major responsibility in safeguarding global food security. To meet this responsibility, the European Union is providing more than 8 billion euro worth of humanitarian aid to vulnerable populations in the period 21-24. Our role as a food exporter is also vital. Last year, 60% of European wheat went to Middle East and North African countries and 26% to Sub-Saharan Africa. However, to safeguard food security in the long term requires more systemic actions. Stability. This brings me to second cornerstone, the stability of our farming system. The production of food depends on farmers. However, between 2010 and 2020, we lost 3 million farms in European Union. In Italy, almost 300,000 farms disappeared during this period. The scale of the problem is, could you imagine that each day we are losing 800 farms in European Union? 800 farms per day. 3 million during one decade, 800 each day. The best way to secure food, to ensure a stable farming community supported by stable incomes. The Common Agricultural Policy is designed to do exactly this, providing an income safety net for Europe's farmers and directing stronger levels of support to those who need it most, including small farmers, young farmers, and farmers facing specific difficulties. The Common Agricultural Policy also helps farmers to maintain their productivity and competitiveness while increasing resilience and sustainability, for example, through supports for precision farming techniques. Sustainability. This brings me to the third cornerstone. In recent years, our farmers have been placed at the front line of climate change. The drought currently faced by many Italian farmers is just one example. As a part of our efforts to tackle climate change, we must strengthen sustainability across the food chain, from consumers and retailers to processors and farmers. Our recent reform of the Common Agricultural Policy includes stronger incentives to help our farmers adopt more sustainable practices while maintaining their productivity. We are also driving research and innovation through the Horizon Europe program with a budget of around 9 billion euro for projects that advance new solutions for more sustainable food and farming. For instance, we are exploring models to support the development of carbon farming, which can deliver win-win benefits for soil health, carbon capture, and farmers' income. If we are to transform our climate ambitions into concrete achievements, such a holistic path is our best hope. And it is a path that Europe cannot take alone. Internationally, the European Union will continue to play a leading role in multilateral organizations such as the United Nations, and will continue to strengthen the sustainability chapters of our trade agreements. And that brings me to the final cornerstone, solidarity. To provide food for a growing global population, which may approach 10 billion by 2050, we must work together. This is why we are supporting over 70 partner countries around the world to boost local food production. For instance, with the African Union, we have set out a rural transformation agenda to strengthen rural communities and accelerate the transition to resilient food systems. We will continue this work at our conference in Rome on 30th of June this year. And of course, solidarity has taken on a greater meaning since Russia began its war of aggression. As a part of our efforts to stand with Ukraine, we have established the solidarity lanes, which have become essential lifelines for their economy and food exports. It is true that these corridors brought unplanned consequences for some of our member states, including my home country, Poland. As a result, we have had to make changes and find compromises while maintaining our support for Ukraine. And this brings me to the final point. We need solidarity not only with our international partners, but also within the European Union. We need to listen and learn from each other and take the path that strengthens our bond rather than breaks us apart. Ladies and gentlemen, for the task of building Europe in times of uncertainty, I have presented 4 cornerstones based on 4 fundamental truths. Security, we must therefore ensure food security. Food depends on farmers, we must therefore ensure stability and economic availability for our farming communities. Farmers depend on the environment, we must therefore ensure stability, sustainability of our food systems. And finally, we are dependent on each other, we must therefore ensure solidarity, especially in difficult times. By building on these cornerstones, I believe we can reinforce the foundation of the European Union laid down in the Treaty of Rome over 60 years ago. Because this much is clear, the state of union depends on the state of our food system. And the future of European agriculture is the future of Europe itself. On that note, and thank you for your time and attention, and I look forward to our conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thanks for this interesting speech, which actually allow me to stress some of the points. So I would like actually to ask our speakers the simple questions. What are the global challenges that the agricultural sector is facing from any different point of view? What are the actions that we want to take to ensure the durability? I would kindly ask Mauro on my right to answer this broad question.
Thank you, Fabio, and thank you to the Commissioner for this introduction. Actually, I think that one of the things we have to realize that we are facing a period that might be long of instability and uncertainty. And that's why we need to get ready, not only thinking to what we can do for the future, but also understanding the lessons we learned from the past. The Commissioner was addressing one of the problems that are affecting European agriculture. Since we have a great technological improvement after the Second World War that has increased very much the yield per hectare, which was an achievement, providing enough food, we have been witnessing a situation where many areas in Europe, the majority of the rural areas, cannot match this kind of agriculture. Therefore, as a result, we had a growing rate of abandonment. You were remembering the numbers for Italy, but this problem can be found from Poland to France, from Sweden to Spain. Therefore, we must understand better how to bring back into the market areas that maybe are not so competitive in terms of amount and price, in terms also of labor cost, but can be very useful to resist, for instance, to the challenge given by socioeconomic threats and also to climate change. I mean, a diversified production, so different kind of production that can maybe resist more to these challenges can help us to have some kind of resource, spare resource from agriculture that can allow us to resist to this change. Another thing is that if we need to compete in terms of bringing back some farmed land into the market, we need to find different solutions for different areas. Basically, we abandon agriculture also because many farmers are not, as I said, competitive. So what is the solution for areas that we need to bring back into a farming activity that can be of help for the farmers? So in this respect, we need to find different strategies for different areas. Some areas are suited for a certain type of agriculture. Some other areas require different goals, different strategy in order to maintain agriculture. And I think this is one of the direction in which we would go, since the European policy, agricultural policy, I have to say in the past, when it has decided to go in a certain direction, has been quite effective.
Which is probably, thank you very much, Mauro. It's actually a great starting point, entry point to pass this question to Lauren, which probably is going to dig into this priority. So how to prioritize how to stress the attention on rural areas. But I don't want to, anticipate any of your answer. So please, the same question, what are the global challenges that we're facing? How we may actually face them?
Thank you very much, and it's nice to be here. I think as the Commissioner was outlining, there's a huge challenge globally of ensuring food security. Despite the fact that 4 billion people depend on agri-food systems for their livelihood globally, that's about half of the global population, 828 million people are experiencing food insecurity. So, despite the fact that the majority of the world's people are working in farming households or households that are associated with agri-food systems, we still have a huge number of people who are facing food insecurity. And those numbers are rising, and they're rising for a conflation of reasons which have to do with the effects of the pandemic on supply chains and agricultural production, that have to do with climate change, as we mentioned, which are making the conditions, especially for smallholder agriculture in developing countries, more and more complicated, and due to conflict. And those are both localized conflicts in developing countries as well as global conflicts like the war in Ukraine, which is affecting supply chains, etc. So this conflation of these three areas is increasing the number of people who are food insecure, and that food insecurity is really concentrated in poor countries, which are at the nexus of these three types of problems. I think that the solutions for these kinds of challenges have to do with recognizing that food systems are very complex. There's a variety of private sector and public sector actors that need to cooperate in order to facilitate increased production, but not only increased production, also increased inclusion of people who are marginalized, access to finances, to services, extension services and knowledge, but also access to markets so that we can create sustainable food systems at local level and at the global level. I think I also wanted to emphasize the fact that the particular challenge that we're facing with the war in Ukraine has to do with the dependence on imports of many countries for wheat and other commodities. The numbers that stick in my head are that Eritrea imported 99% of its wheat from Ukraine prior to the conflict. So we have countries that are facing food insecurity sort of in the past year overnight, basically. And solutions like the one the Commissioner was mentioning, as well as import facilities for food, are very important parts of the solution for this. The longer-term challenge of climate change needs to be met through increasing the amount of money that flows for adaptation to smallholders. Less than 2% of the money that's dedicated to climate change reaches smallholder farmers globally.
Yeah, thank you very much. As I was expecting, another very important point of view, which actually gives me the perfect chance to ask the same question to Jonathan, possibly stressing on the role of trade in this case, since Lawrence just mentioned about the importance of relying on import for food security. So, thanks.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation to being here. Yeah, no, I think Lauren's done a fantastic job in painting the big picture on food security and the challenges, and the Commissioner Wojciechowski, has also mentioned climate change and the particular sustainability challenges that brings up. So specifically on trade, yeah, I mean, markets today are facing distortions and protection which affect how they function. There are other issues around, such as food price inflation and factors which affect the ability of market actors to compete fairly and sustainably on global markets. Some of those link back to some of the things that Lauren was referring to, access to markets, but also things like underinvestment for things like public goods, access to infrastructure and services such as public goods. Thanks.
Yeah, as I was expecting, a very important point of view. And last but not least, let's have the point of view of Matthias Berninger. So same question, what are the global challenges that we're facing, how we are going to address?
I had a chance to visit Ukraine just a few weeks ago and to see firsthand what's happening. Putin strategically has looked at the food sector and the way agriculture infrastructure was targeted from basically day one of the invasion of Ukraine should all make us realize that there are regions in the world that look at the food system through a very strategic lens. That's true for Beijing, it's certainly true in Washington, and it's also true in Moscow. And I think for the European Union, and I'm glad we talk about agriculture at this important event here, and that the European University Institute added that to the agenda, we have to go back to looking at the food system as a very strategic part. We can't just talk about it through the lens of rural development or beautiful landscapes. Europe is playing a crucial role. We are superior in wheat production, for example, and that's why we are able to export the amounts of wheat the Commissioner was referring to into regions that would love to grow wheat but can't for a variety of reasons, conflict and climate change being paramount here. Looking strategically at the food system also means Europe needs to be as welcoming to innovation as China and the United States are. And there is going to be a pivotal decision of the Commission later this year, and that's about inviting new breeding technologies into our agricultural system. I think that in order to ensure that we are both sustainable and have the output of agriculture that's possible, we can't stay behind when it comes to innovation. And that for me is one of the crucial elements that we need to address. I don't think we are able to adjust to climate change in agriculture while at the same time neglecting the same technologies that helped us going through the pandemic for agriculture. We are here in Florence. It's a city that has benefited from one of the breakthrough innovations, book printing of the Renaissance. The Ottoman Empire decided not to do book printing. And one of the reasons why a lot of the intellectual potential moved from Istanbul into Europe, and this town being one of the key cities where that happened, is that there was one region welcoming innovation and another one kind of putting the brakes on. We have to be very wary of that, and I'm very hopeful that the European Union will be much more open to innovation going forward.
Yeah, thank you very much. We touched a couple of keywords that I think are very crucial. And the one that I want to stress again is food security. And a new one that is very important is innovation. So let me have another round of questions. So let me ask how we're going to reconcile food security with self-sufficiency, fairness, inclusiveness, that of course are different goals. So I would like to challenge our speakers giving a short answer if there is any way to balance those goals, starting with the Commissioner.
Thank you very much for this question. And the first, the reflection that I just said before, I'd like to add something that we should be thankful for our farmers that they ensured food security and this very difficult time last 3 years, COVID, and now the situation after Russian aggression against Ukraine, and also before the aggression, because the increase of fertilizer prices, for example, it was the results of the Russian preparation to this war, to this aggression. And we should be thankful for our farmers, for this food security, and at the same time, European Union maintained its position as the biggest food exporter in the world. The value of the food, the surplus in export higher than import was 58 billion euro 2022 in this difficult time. Interesting that comparing to the European agriculture with the United States agriculture, United States has exactly 2 times more agricultural land than European Union. 160 million hectares in the EU and 320 United States. But the value of production is higher in the European Union. It was about the $430 billion and United States 370, just about. And the European agriculture, having 2 times less land, is more productive. And very interesting is observation inside the European Union. We are in Italy. The Italian agriculture, not first time I say that I'm under impression of this successful Italian agriculture. 8% of agricultural land in European Union, 12.5 million hectares, and the gross added value is 18% of the EU 27. 8% of land, 18% of production. The last year before this crisis, 2019, the value, gross added value in Italy, Italian agriculture was bigger than France. 32 billion euro in Italy, almost 33, and 31 in France. France is 28 million hectares, Italy 12.5. What is the main secret of this success story? Small farms, but families, small and medium scale farms, but very well organized system. Cooperatives, good synergy between farmers, processing industry, and market. In European Union, we have many times there is thinking that the export, of course, it is very important to maintain this position as the biggest food exporter in the world. But also this is huge chance to, but this is the target of the farm to fork strategy, to reduce distance from farm to fork, local market, local processing industry. This is very important, and there is a good example in Italy, the well-functioning the system. And it should be promoted in the rest of Europe. European Union is not this situation like, for example, New Zealand. We had negotiations about the free trade agreement with New Zealand. In New Zealand, they produce 15 kilograms of milk per capita per day. 15 kilograms. And the closest market is in China, in Asia. But they depends a lot from the export. Absolutely. But in European Union, we have the potential of the local market close. It was a very positive experience my previous time in Florence. There was G20 meeting, and I saw the local market with local food. That's in the center of Florence. It was very interesting because the small producers, small farmers, organic farmers, they sold their local food on the local market. We need to promote such approach. Of course, the innovation, the precision farming, we can to reduce the costs of agricultural production. There are opportunities in the common agricultural policy, in the strategic plans. We have to make our agriculture more innovative. But summarizing, that the main value of the European agriculture is quality of food. We should not, the This is not should be not our target to compete in the quantity, the quality, high quality food, geographical indications, that's to increase the standards of production. We have the highest standards of production, for example, animal welfare standards in the animal production. We should to strengthen this direction, the quality. This is the main value of the European agriculture. Thank you very much.
Thanks indeed. It's a really important point. So I would say productivity, quality, those are very important keywords. So I would like to ask Mauro to touch the same question, but possibly also bring in the role of rural areas that has been just touched by the Commissioner, and the role of innovation. So how you see rural areas playing a crucial role, and how innovation can help promoting rural areas and agriculture.
Well, the Commissioner touched a crucial point, because when we speak about self-sufficiency, no, we are speaking about the amount of commodities that we need to feed the population, fine. But food security today has to do also with food quality. And food quality today is not simply the process of producing a food, but also the linkage between the territory and the food. Some food are very typical of a certain territory. They will never have an access to big markets. You can only know this local food if you visit the territory, and if you put together things like tourists, let's say, that go in a place, you're speaking about Italy and Tuscany, and you find a product that you will never find in a supermarket in Berlin or in London, but you will find it in here. And this is a key element for me, because when we speak about the agricultural market, we speak about competitiveness, how you can compete with a certain level of production or prices if you do not go for quality. So ensuring the quality of the territory and the quality of the place means also to reduce the tendency to separate the agro-industry from the local production, because this is a threat that we are facing. And you are collecting, and we are in a globalized world, we are collecting food from everywhere, and you may have a very robust agro-industry, but you have abandonment at the same time. How this is possible? Because you don't buy food, you don't use the food that is locally produced. And this has to go with the price of the food and how this food can be competitive with something that you are importing from elsewhere. So in this respect, if you want to reduce also the rate of abandonment you were mentioning, and we spoke about farmers, maybe some other numbers may be more easy to understand. Speaking about Italy, we have abandoned 10 million hectares of farmland land, almost the half of what we have. So why? The people was not interested in in producing? No, they were very interested in producing, but the prices at which they were producing were not competitive. The strange case we had with the war between Ukraine and Russia, that suddenly, in the area where I live in the countryside, some farmers started again to produce wheat because they found out that the price of the wheat was finally competitive with an increasing price that in a certain period occurred, and so they were back into the market. Okay, we cannot expect another war that has put Europe into crisis to bring back the farmers that have been abandoning the land into the production. So self-sufficiency means, on one side, to bring back some areas into production, but food quality, on which I believe it's one of the best things that Europe has in its hand. And coming to, finally, to the element of cohesion, we have to remember that agriculture is perhaps the strongest heritage that represent all the European population, from east to west, from north to south. We are all together because we were all farmers in the past, at least, and agriculture is a heritage put us all together. So recognize these different forms of agriculture and making the farmers feel integrated in a common project, I think, is one of the strongest way also to realize a cohesion that is based, as you perfectly know, on family farming, basically from the social point of view.
Thanks. This is a very great point. Actually, is possibly stressing the importance of being inclusive. So we discussed about food quality, we discussed about competitiveness, productivity. So the question I want to pose to Lauren is how we use inclusiveness, how important is inclusiveness to make this transformation, so to ensure that agriculture is strong again?
Thank you. So I won't speak about Europe particularly, but I'll speak on from a global standpoint. And I mentioned to you that 828 million people experience food insecurity. That number hides a number of other features that you might want to know. First of all, 75% of those people are farmers. So they are people who work in agriculture and don't have enough food for themselves and their family. The second fact is that 126 million more women experience food insecurity than men. The FAO has just come out with a new major report on the status of women in agri-food systems. And I think if we're talking about inclusiveness and equity, we should really focus also on the benefits of having a more inclusive agriculture and agri-food system that incorporates women's work. So agriculture is traditionally thought of as a men's industry. It might be obvious from the panel. But I think the important thing to note is that more than a third of women who work in the world work in agri-food systems. In Europe, it's less, also in the United States and other OECD economies. But in Africa, 66% of women who work in agri-food systems. In South Asia, 71% of women who work in agri-food systems. And what these numbers tell you is that there's a very important role for agri-food systems in generating decent work for people, but also for women. Women are underpaid, they work part-time. There's a wage gap of 82 cents on the dollar in agriculture globally between men and women. And if we are able to close some of these gaps, which require not only addressing the shortcomings of assets and resources for women, but also social norms, which dictate that women work in less profitable parts of the value chain or in low-skilled work, there can be major economic benefits. So the report that we worked on estimated that we could gain $1 trillion or 1% of global GDP by closing wage and productivity gaps between men and women in agri-food systems, and also that we could increase the resilience of 235 million households globally, because women who are empowered make more money, they have higher senses of well-being, and they're also running more resilient households and farms. So for all of these reasons, it makes good sense when we think about inclusion to include smallholder farmers, young people, people who are in poverty, but also women who make up a major part of the agricultural and agri-food system workforce.
Thank you very much. So before starting the Q&A, I would just ask a couple of questions, very straightforward, to Jonathan and to Matthias. To Jonathan, I would like to ask how trade can help be more inclusive in the global agricultural sector. Just that.
Thank you very much, Fabio. Yeah, and I think it's very much about addressing some of these global food security challenges that Lawrence just mentioned. And there are different dimensions here. Clearly, there's the availability of food dimension, which Commissioner Wojciechowski referred to. You've got this phenomenon where trade can actually help move food from surplus areas, maybe the EU or other regions where there's a surplus of agricultural production and food, to areas which are in deficit, like the Middle East or North Africa or Sub-Saharan Africa. Trade is also important in boosting access to foods, and it does that in part by raising incomes and creating jobs. And that can be within the agriculture sector, it can be in other parts of the agri-food systems, as Oren said, or even in other sectors of the economy. Then you've got the stability dimension. And here, trade with the shocks that we see from climate change, from geopolitical events, from the other phenomena that we've seen, such as COVID, we can really see the role of trade in actually helping to cushion shocks. The example was given about Eritrea. Well, Ethiopia, in fact, is a really interesting case as well, where the WTO has done some research, and we've seen how, in fact, with the shock of the Ukraine conflict, actually there was a diversion of imports from the Black Sea region to imports from the US and Argentina, so using trade as a way of cushioning those shocks and strengthening the resilience of countries to unexpected events. And finally, I'd like to mention the aspect of trade in improving the utilization of food, the diversity of diets. Around the world, we see people consuming more and more varied types of food, and being able to strengthen the nutritional content of their food, in part because of the role that trade and markets can play. And here I'd just like to come back to something that Commissioner Wojciechowski said right at the beginning, which I think is really, really important. Governments need to work together on these challenges. They need to work together on shared global challenges, whether it's climate change or food security or poverty reduction or inclusiveness and gender equity. And places like the WTO, the World Trade Organization, are really important in providing a forum for countries to come and do this. Thank you.
Thanks indeed. We're going to start the Q&A very soon, but before I want to ask a very straightforward question. So which role for innovations? So how important are innovation? Just a very few sentences to open the Q&A that we're going to have now.
I think the challenge for agriculture is that we have to decarbonize agriculture. We have to mobilize agriculture to be a carbon sink. The Commissioner talked about the research in Europe on carbon farming. But, and most importantly, we have to help agriculture to adapt to climate change. Just this week, the WMO has predicted that we will have a change of the weather patterns in the direction of more heat. El Nino is most likely to occur, which will lead to extreme heat. And all the heat records we have seen recently are actually under a weather pattern that lends itself to colder temperatures. So the heat is really on, which, for example, for wheat production, but also thinking about tomato, for example, for vegetables is going to be a crucial topic. We will not be able to deal with climate change without focusing on innovation. But to Lauren's point, there are also other areas of innovation. So we reach roughly 50 million smallholder farmers, the majority of them being women. And there it's about access. The biggest risk for a female smallholder farmer is not linked to agricultural inputs. It's also not linked to uncertainty about land ownership. The biggest risk is unwanted pregnancy. So providing access to family planning, to contraception, something the world has promised to achieve by 2030, is one of the crucial elements. It's a social innovation part. So we have to combine agronomic innovation, social innovation, and access to those tools to dig ourselves out of the hole we are currently in. And my last point would be the stocks to use ratio has gone down 4 years in a row. So we are currently consuming more agricultural products than we produce. We are consuming more than we produce globally. And that is the reason why we discuss these problems today in a very different way than, let's say, 10 years ago.
Yeah, thank you very much. There are very interesting insights that we have listened from our speakers. I will just open the floor for Q&A. If there are, I'm sure there will be. Please.
Hi, I'm Thomas. I work for the Institute for Climate Economics. I've got 2 questions. The first one, what I find surprising in the EU agricultural policy, especially when it comes to decarbonization, is that it puts a lot of the pressure on the weakest element of the value chain, the farmer, that has the least capacity to invest, and that is also the most politically sensitive. So the first question there is how can we change the EU policy to put more pressure for change on the agri-food industry that has, billions of euros of investment, and that could play a role to decarbonize the agricultural system, for instance, by reducing a bit the amount of meat in processed food, just to give that as an example. Second question, water. We are lacking water in Europe already. This may be the driest season, but it may be the wettest season in the rest of our lifetime. So the question there, we know that around half of the water in Europe is being consumed by the agricultural sector. At the same time, the European Commission wants to push, and rightly so, for the development of production of microchips in Europe, of hydrogen in Europe. All of those are industrial processes that require water. And so the question there, what should be the contribution of the agricultural sector to reduce its consumption of water because we're going to have less, but also to make sure that we also have space for the use of water for emerging economic sectors such as microchips or hydrogen?
Thank you very much. I would like to collect another question before having any of the speaker picking any of the questions, please.
Thanks a lot,
And
Max
I
Weber.
would kindly like to be concise and speak
Yeah,
as long
Max
as
Weber
possible.
fellow. Also have two questions as my colleague. First question concerns the cases related to the pillage of Ukrainian food by Russians. Do Commission or FAO have any vision how to prepare the response to these cases, how to track the cases of pillage, and what consequences of these cases are? And second question relates to the very important disinformation campaign launched by Russians, especially in Global South, related to the food instability because of sanctions, kindly because of sanctions. What is the response of international organizations, of the European Union, how to counter this disinformation campaign? Thanks.
Thank you very much. So there is global value chain, there is specialization, and the issue of war. I would collect the last one, please very short, and then I will ask anyone to reply.
My name is Daiva. I'm a policy leader fellow at UI. This year, in December, the European Commission and other institutions should decide on a very popular agricultural chemical, the glyphosate extension. And I think with many other of these habits in European farming, the whole system is facing a lot of pressure to extend and to increase the use of different questionable chemicals. So how can we make sure that we use the best scientific evidence on substances like that? Thank you.
Thank you very much. So chemicals and the use of chemistry. So I would not force anyone, but if anyone wants to take those challenges, it would be great.
Maybe the Commission. the first one to...
The first, maybe I will start from the question of the Russian aggression against Ukraine and the consequences for our agriculture. Now, first of all, we support we support it, and we continue support for Ukraine for export of grain from Ukraine. That's Ukraine was before the war big food, both first of all cereals and oilseeds exporter. 2021, they had a record level of harvest in Ukraine. They harvested 107 million tons of all grains, cereals and oilseeds. And after the Russian attack, the export from Ukraine was almost full stopped. We started to support the Ukraine by solidarity lanes. This is the very important role of the frontline countries. First of all, Romania, which is the main hub for the export. The second is Poland. But it was a very difficult situation at this time. And also, we decided also to liberalize the market with Ukraine, the trade with Ukraine. Ukraine has free access to the European market, which was very helpful generally for the European Union, because 2022, there was a very difficult year because of drought. And for example, the maize harvest was reduced 28%. And to supply maize from Ukraine was important for countries like Spain, using the maize as a feed, especially for the pig farming. And but it created some problems in frontline countries, because there was import to high level of import. The prices were very cheap in Ukraine. It was possible to buy wheat, for example, per $100 per ton, and it was the reason that this trade should be stopped. And the European Union we decided first time in the history of the Union to import ban only for the group of member states, not for whole Union. But it was necessary to stop this import, but not to stop the transit. Everywhere can be transit also by these five countries. In the future, that Unfortunately, in Ukraine, the area of agriculture, cultivated area, this year will be reduced 7 million hectares. They had 29 million hectares. This year they will use only 22 million hectares for the agricultural production. And the production probably will be reduced 50% in Ukraine. Yeah. And this is also our concern. We have the two different problems. One is we can observe the oversupply in some countries and the crisis reduction of prices, but generally in the European Union we need import from Ukraine. And this is also the reason that we are considering our reaction, taking into account this reduction of production in Ukraine, that our policy, some restrictions for productivity is one of this is that's set aside with the exclusion from production 4% of agricultural land. We are analyzing the opportunity to suspend this restriction because we need more production, taking also into account the situation with drought. But about this one reflection about the innovation, because sometimes the innovation in agriculture means to return to the good practices from the past. Exactly. For example, to use the manure, the mix. The problem in European agriculture is that, I said before, that we lost a lot of farms, but the main problem that we lost a lot of mixed farms. Mixed farms, joining the crop production and the animal production, which is this farm should be more resilient, and also to use the manure. This is a good answer for the problems with water management. That's to use the manure is better to avoid the drought. This is also the innovation. Sometimes to return to well-known old practices.
Absolutely, no, I was sure.
Precision farming, of course, the modern technology is very important. Satellite technology, yes.
I want to ask, if possible, like a super short question to assure the audience that chemicals are not as problematic as we may think, but if possible, like very straightforward, like 30 seconds.
Well, I mean, Europe has established, after the mad cow disease crisis, probably the world-leading system to ensure food security in the way they approve new chemicals and older chemicals in agriculture. And the question was, what about the decisions? For example, I'm sure you're referring to glyphosate as one of the herbicides. For me, it's about trusting EFSA to come up with the right recommendation, to trust the process, which is very science-based. And my hope is that EFSA will come to the same conclusions as the European Chemicals Agencies and 4 country risk assessors in the space. Farmers in Europe need crop protection in order to keep the production high, but also crop protection needs to be modernized. So the second part of the answer is we need to approve innovation in the space. At Bayer, we will, for the first time in a generation, introduce a new herbicide in Europe, and we hope that this new herbicide will be approved, because these kind of alternatives then allow to replace chemicals from the 1950s with chemicals from the new millennia.
Yeah, thank you very much. If there is like 10 seconds, then we have to close. It's really the final sentence.
No, I wanted to come in on one point around disinformation. I think that an agency like FAO, which has a normative and a knowledge generation role, is providing data about the war in Ukraine, around price spikes, around damage to agricultural infrastructure, but also around livelihoods in farming families and communities, as well as rural areas. And there's a lot of information that's available about those 3 issues.
Thank you very much. So not only the role of chemicals, but also information. I really want to thank all the speakers that we have today. I want to thank you for joining us. And stay tuned and please follow the plenary session that is going to be at 10:55, where we are going to have the EU President speaking and also the Secretary General delivering the message from President Mattarella. Thank you very much again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
L'Europe ne se fera pas d'un coup, ni dans une construction d'ensemble. Elle se fera par des réalisations concrètes, créant d'abord une solidarité de fait.
Better is using digital tools. So farmers like Kurt can grow our food using less land, water, and energy. Bayer. Science for better.
To see Jack smile. To watch the Sahotas eat. To see Anshi breathe a sigh of relief. Everything we do together, however small it may seem, helps make our todays and tomorrows better. This is Team Bayer at work, a melting pot of thinkers and doers, united by science, striving for better. Better, with resilient crops that can weather climate change. Better, with personal healthcare solutions that improve our well-being. Better, with treatments tailored to help patients fight diseases. This is health for all and hunger for none. This is for Jack. This is for the Sahotas. This is for Hassan, who was born at 5:46, and his lovely mum. This is our company of missions. This is collective power of over 99,000 people around the world who care. It's a story we're all writing together. A story of better, inspired by you, Team Bayer. Science for better.
Better is resilient crops, so farmers like Emilio can confidently take on any weather. Bayer, science for better.
dans une construction d'ensemble. Elle se fera par des réalisations concrètes, créant d'abord une solidarité de fait.
Better is using digital tools. So farmers like Kurt can grow our food using less land, water, and energy. Bayer. Science for better.
To see Jack smile. To watch the Sahotas eat. To see Anshi breathe a sigh of relief. Everything we do together, however small it may seem, helps make our todays and tomorrows better. This is Team Bayer at work, a melting pot of thinkers and doers, united by science, striving for better. Better, with resilient crops that can weather climate change. Better, with personal healthcare solutions that improve our well-being. Better, with treatments tailored to help patients fight diseases. This is health for all and hunger for none. This is for Jack. This is for the Sahotas. This is for Hassan, who was born at 5:46, and his lovely mum. This is our company of missions. This is collective power of over 99,000 people around the world who care. It's a story we're all writing together. A story of better, inspired by you, Team Bayer. Science for better.
Better is resilient crops. So farmers like Emilio can confidently take on any weather. Bayer. Science for better.
that helps a lot in general, and then there's a great community to help you develop your research, find perhaps areas of research you didn't know about but would be immensely useful. There's professors, there's fellow researchers that do different things, but quite often, even though they do different things, have different research interests, they still come to help you in your research by suggesting certain avenues of literature you hadn't thought about. And I feel like everyone here is always very open to help you, very open to have a conversation at least, either over lunch or coffee or in their office. And I think that really is extremely helpful. I think that leads to being able to do the best research you can.
The relationship between a researcher and a research supervisor varies a lot because it depends on the supervisor and on the researcher. And it also varies by year. So the researcher can expect to have a reasonably intense relationship with their supervisor in their first year. So for example, I would expect to see my first year researchers every couple of weeks in their first term. Maybe that would be every 3 or 4 weeks in the second term, unless the researcher is experiencing particular problems or difficulties. And normally before a professor meets a researcher, they would often ask the researcher to submit something to them that they can read, so there's a basis for having a conversation. So I'd say, aside from seminars, the two main things that a supervisor offers are a reading and commenting service, and then a meeting opportunity to discuss the researcher's ideas. And we have, because we're a relatively small department, we do have quite close contact with our researchers, which is one of the most rewarding bits of the job for us, and I think one of the most rewarding aspects of the EUI for the researchers.
Obviously, the social life at the EUI has been very different the last year and a half. I think that's true for anywhere in the world, but taking the social life as it was the year and a half I was here before COVID started.
Welcome to this session of the State of the Union Conference, where we are honored to have the participation of Italy's Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation, Antonio Tajani. I give the floor now to Professor Renaud Dehus, President of the European University Institute.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's of course a great honor to welcome today such a distinguished host as Minister Tajani. I want to stress that we at the European University Institute are very much attached to our tradition of having a distinguished Italian speaker opening the State of the Union Conference. Italy, for us, is not only the wonderful host country that everybody knows. It's also a country to which we are grateful for its unfailing support for the Institute and a partner for many of our development plans. The creation of the School of Transnational Governance some years ago, and now the programs we are setting up to provide training activities towards the Western Balkans and countries from the Eastern Partnership. It is, therefore, a great honor for me to welcome Vice President Antonio Tajani, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Italy, and well-known European, if I may put it that way, since he has, as is well known in his past career, served in important positions, first as Vice President of the European Commission, and then as President of the European Parliament. He's therefore uniquely placed to address the important issues that feature on the agenda of our conference, and se posso aggiungerei in modo più personale, è per noi, signor Ministro, un grandissimo piacere rivederla così fedele all'Istituto. Abbiamo avuto il piacere di averla pochi mesi fa, grazie di aver trovato il tempo per questa visita e per questa apertura dei nostri lavori. Ma prima di darle la parola dobbiamo dare posto a un messaggio del Capo dello Stato che pregherò pertanto il nostro Segretario Generale di voler presentare.
Signor Vicepresidente del Consiglio, Ministro degli Affari Esteri, Mrs. Deputy President of the European Parliament, Commissioners, members of the European Parliament, Vice President of the Tuscany Region, Signora Sindaco di Fiesole, Signor Sindaco di Firenze, autorità civili e militari, cari amici e colleghi. Ho l'onore oggi di leggere un messaggio che il signor Presidente della Repubblica ha inteso recapitarci, non potendo essere qui con noi. La conferenza sullo Stato dell'Unione, che si riunisce quest'anno a Fiesole, costituisce un'occasione preziosa per riflettere sul progetto europeo in un momento storico cruciale per il nostro continente e a pochi giorni dall'anniversario del 9 maggio, festa dell'Europa. L'Europa, nel momento più incerto e sconfortante della sua storia, seppe fare dell'improbabile il possibile. I popoli europei, al termine di una guerra sanguinosa e fratricida, si unirono decidendo di costituire insieme il proprio futuro, ponendo le fondamenta per una pace duratura. Da allora si è dato avvio ad un percorso europeo comune che, non senza difficoltà, contraddizioni e anche fallimenti, prosegue lungo la sua traiettoria rappresentando un'esperienza di successo. L'Unione sta affrontando nuovamente oggi emergenze globali di portata epocale, quali la pandemia Covid-19, le conseguenze drammatiche del cambiamento climatico, i flussi migratori incontrollati, la ingiustificabile aggressione della Federazione Russa all'Ucraina e le sue devastanti conseguenze umanitarie, geopolitiche ed economiche. Prove che hanno offerto e richiedono ancora unità, solidarietà e uno sforzo congiunto nel difendere quei valori che ci uniscono e senza i quali l'Unione non avrebbe motivo di essere. Lo Stato di diritto, le libertà fondamentali, la democrazia. Oggi più che mai è necessario continuare la costruzione europea con coraggio. Nei momenti di maggiore difficoltà rinnovarsi è essenziale e risolutivo. Costruire l'Europa nei tempi di incertezza, recita il tema scelto per la manifestazione odierna, cogliendo il senso della sfida. Possiamo trarre dalla storia una lezione. L'Europa ha dimostrato di saper affrontare le sfide e le crisi difficili, emergendone più forte e coesa. Le ragioni del patto fondativo europeo sono più che mai attuali. Con questi sentimenti auguro pieno successo alla vostra iniziativa. Sergio Mattarella.
I am honored to introduce Italy's Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation, Antonio Tajani.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for inviting me today in this very important event in Fiesole. Bonjour. Je pense que c'est très important, comme a dit le président de la République italienne, de réfléchir sur l'état de l'Union européenne. Qu'est-ce qu'il faut faire? Allow me to turn in my mother tongue in Italian. È giusto riflettere sulla nostra Unione Europea in un momento particolare. Abbiamo una guerra alle porte dell'Europa, stiamo vivendo ancora gli strascichi della terza crisi dopo quella di Lehman Brothers e quella provocata dal coronavirus, quella provocata dall'innalzamento del prezzo dell'energia che ha provocato problemi in tutto il nostro continente e viviamo ancora un aumento preoccupante dell'inflazione. Cosa possiamo fare, cosa abbiamo fatto, cosa dobbiamo pensare per il nostro futuro? Per il governo italiano è chiaro che esistono due stelle polari per quanto riguarda la politica estera. Una sono le relazioni transatlantiche, gli Stati Uniti sono il nostro principale alleato, l'altra stella polare si chiama Europa. Siamo paese fondatore, vogliamo essere protagonisti con i nostri 60 milioni di cittadini della costruzione di un percorso che veda tutti quanti i popoli europei uniti per guardare con più ottimismo al futuro, per affrontare insieme le grandi sfide geopolitiche. Perché quando sarà terminata la guerra avremo dei giganti, la Cina, l'India, la stessa Federazione Russa, gli Stati Uniti, con i quali dovremo confrontarci. Certamente, e qui torna l'importanza di essere parte della Unione Europea, non potremo affrontare questa grande sfida globale come non possiamo affrontare quella di questi giorni, ma ancor di più in futuro. Quindi l'Unione Europea non è qualcosa che riguarda il passato, ma che riguarda il futuro di tutti quanti noi, le grandi sfide se fossimo da soli. 60 milioni di italiani, per quanto capaci, intelligenti, inventivi, non potrebbero uscire, come posso dire, vincenti da un confronto geopolitico, economico con gli altri. Quindi è nostro interesse, è una necessità quella di stare uniti. Ma stare uniti perché? Solo per ragioni geopolitiche? Certamente sono fondamentali. E dobbiamo fare di più. Abbiamo notato ancora una volta quanto si sia indietro nella politica di difesa. Politica di difesa europea, se ne cominciò a parlare negli anni 50, poi venne nel 1954 fermata. Stiamo compiendo, dicevo, un percorso, un po' lentamente, permettetemi di dirlo, e ce ne accorgiamo di quanto sia stato lento questo percorso proprio in questi momenti, quando si decide dobbiamo dare le munizioni all'Ucraina, dobbiamo sostenere l'Ucraina. Se non c'è un sistema di difesa, anche un'industria della difesa, meglio coordinata, che sia parte di un disegno europeo, certamente è più difficile fare politica estera. Dicevano nell'Ottocento non si fa politica estera se non si batte bandiera. All'epoca battere bandiera significava avere flotte che nel mondo potessero affermare la presenza di un paese. E se vogliamo affermare la nostra presenza anche e soprattutto come portatori di pace, io penso alla missione Altea in Bosnia e Erzegovina, che è una missione tutta europea. Avere una difesa comune non significa trasformare l'Europa in una sorta di realtà guerrafondaia, significa avere un'Europa protagonista della politica, portatrice di pace. Perché chi conosce poi anche il mondo militare sa che se c'è qualcuno che non è guerrafondaio è proprio il militare. Ma serve un'Europa che possa accelerare i tempi per avere una unica politica estera, che possa prendere delle decisioni. Allora dobbiamo domandarci quali riforme fare. Il voto all'unanimità è utile o non è utile per avere un'Europa politicamente più forte? Io credo che si debba procedere a qualche cambiamento. E guardando anche i più giovani fra di voi, penso che l'Europa, per fare delle scelte politiche, debba anche rafforzare la sua istituzione democratica, che è il Parlamento europeo. È l'unico Parlamento al mondo quasi che, per esempio, non ha il potere di iniziativa legislativa, e questo non va nella direzione di rafforzare la democrazia all'interno della Unione Europea. I rappresentanti dei popoli europei devono avere il diritto, in nome e per conto dei loro elettori, di presentare delle proposte legislative, che non possono essere, le proposte legislative, una prerogativa praticamente assoluta, sì, c'è quella delle iniziative popolari, ma è talmente complicato, prerogativa assoluta della Commissione europea. Perché l'unico rappresentante elettivo è il Parlamento. E allora è vero che Lisbona ha fatto compiere un passo in avanti al Parlamento, ma bisogna continuare quel percorso. Percorso che deve vedere l'Europa certamente protagonista di scelte politiche, con l'Italia che deve essere protagonista. Tante volte io sento lamentele sul ruolo dell'Italia, ma contiamo poco. Se si vuole contare bisogna lavorare di più, bisogna essere più presenti, bisogna essere più attivi anche nelle istituzioni comunitarie, perché l'Europa siamo noi. Abbiamo il diritto e il dovere di contare di più in Europa. Non possiamo lamentarci se gli altri contano di più, dobbiamo farci valere. Ma battere i pugni sul tavolo non serve. Bisogna, per contare, essere credibili, seri, affidabili, responsabili e fare delle proposte. Perché discutere anche dei contenuti delle scelte europee non significa essere anti-europei, è vero l'esatto contrario, più si discute più si è europeisti perché si vuole partecipare alla costruzione di un progetto comune. Ma se stiamo discutendo in questa fase, per esempio, del patto di stabilità e crescita, se diciamo che il patto di stabilità e crescita nuovo, così come proposto dalla Commissione, rappresenta certamente un passo in avanti, però credo che dovrebbe essere aggiustato, magari escludendo dal conto le spese per la transizione ecologica, le spese per il PNRR, le spese che vengono fatte magari per sostenere l'Ucraina. Sono tutte scelte dettate da politiche generali che vanno al di là della posizione di un singolo paese e dell'economia di un singolo paese. Quindi riflettiamo, discutiamo, faccio un esempio perché è quello di più stretta attualità, potremmo parlare della difesa europea e c'è qualcuno che dice no, ma la NATO, ma la difesa europea non sarebbe un'alternativa alla NATO. La difesa europea sarebbe rafforzare la presenza europea all'interno della NATO per dare un contributo maggiore. Io ho sempre insistito sulla necessità, avendo dedicato la stragrande maggioranza della mia vita politica alle istituzioni comunitarie, della necessità di avere sempre più italiani a Bruxelles, perché gli italiani possono dare un grande contributo. Non lo facciamo abbastanza, dobbiamo farlo ancora di più. Contare di più in Europa significa avere più idee, più proposte, più partecipazione. Non è vero neanche che gli italiani sono esclusi. Io sono diventato Presidente del Parlamento europeo, nessuno mi ha escluso. Mi hanno votato non solo tanto gli italiani, perché sennò non sarei stato eletto. Quindi vuol dire che se si vuole essere protagonisti in Europa, e non ho mai rinunciato alla mia identità di italiano, ecco, rinunciare significa poi essere costretti a lamentarsi degli altri, l'asse franco-tedesco. Mettiamocela tutta per contare di più. C'è bisogno anche in Europa di più Italia. Dobbiamo farci ascoltare, perché l'Europa siamo noi. L'Europa deve essere la sintesi di tutto ciò che c'è nel nostro continente. Culture e identità anche diverse, lingue diverse. Gli Stati Uniti è più facile costruire gli Stati Uniti d'America che gli Stati Uniti d'Europa, eppure ci hanno messo 100 anni. Noi abbiamo delle identità talmente forti, ciascuno di noi, che poi mettere tutto in comune è sempre complicato. Però credo che valga la pena farlo, perché poi non dobbiamo neanche considerare l'Europa come se fosse il palazzo di Berlaymont, il cuore dell'Europa. Il cuore dell'Europa sono quasi 500 milioni di donne e uomini che vivono in Europa. Confondere la burocrazia con l'Europa è un grave errore. La burocrazia è al servizio di 500 milioni di persone e non viceversa. E qui è la politica che deve avere il coraggio e la forza di imporsi, di assumersi delle responsabilità, dare delle direttive, dare delle linee guida alla burocrazia, che deve applicare le scelte politiche. Per questo insisto sulla necessità di un'Europa più democratica, con più poteri al Parlamento europeo. Ma non lo dico soltanto perché sono stato Presidente del Parlamento europeo, perché ne sono assolutamente convinto, perché così i popoli si sentono più rappresentati nelle istituzioni comunitarie, nella vita quotidiana. E poi ai tanti ragazzi che frequentano i corsi di questa magnifica realtà, siamo fieri di ospitarla in Italia, grazie per quello che fate, grazie anche poi alle nostre amministrazioni che contribuiscono al mantenimento di una realtà culturale formativa così importante che permette di formare nuove generazioni, manager esperti. Parlavamo prima anche di manager che si formeranno in provenienza dai Balcani. Noi vogliamo che questi paesi facciano parte dell'Unione Europea. Siamo favorevoli all'ingresso dell'Ucraina, ma siamo favorevoli anche all'ingresso dei paesi dei Balcani occidentali che sono candidati ad essere parte dell'Unione Europea. Perché altrimenti rischiamo di lasciare popoli che hanno comunque una visione e una tradizione comune alla nostra sotto l'influenza di altre realtà che non hanno lo stesso minimo comune denominatore. Perché dico questo? Perché c'è qualche cosa che ci lega. Che cosa lega un polacco a un italiano, un maltese a uno svedese? Ci sono secoli di storia, anche di lotte, di confronti, però ci sono tanti di quegli elementi in comune che nel momento in cui si riflette sullo stato dell'arte, quindi sullo stato dell'Unione, non possono essere dimenticati. La nostra identità non può essere dimenticata. E credere e rafforzare la propria identità, credere e rafforzare la propria cultura, significa non chiudersi agli altri, ma significa aprirsi agli altri, perché più si è convinti di ciò che si è, più si è disposti al dialogo. E per questo dico che insieme dobbiamo anche affrontare la grande questione delle migrazioni. È un tema storico, non è soltanto un fatto di cronaca, è soltanto un'Europa unita, che ha un idem sentire, può svolgere un ruolo importante anche nel continente africano, perché non è soltanto una questione di ordine pubblico, quella dell'immigrazione, sì, in alcuni casi lo è anche, ma è una questione di una visione strategica. Come l'Europa vuole rapportarsi con il continente che ha di fronte? Con quali lenti vuole guardare all'Africa? E dobbiamo guardare tutti assieme, non con le lenti dei colonizzatori, ma con le lenti degli africani, per rafforzare un'amicizia. Loro aspettano l'Europa come l'aspettano in Sud America, perché abbiamo dei legami talmente forti che non possiamo dimenticare, ma lo dobbiamo fare come Europa. E ogni Stato europeo deve dare il suo contributo per questo progetto, per risolvere le grandi questioni storiche, perché altrimenti fare un bilancio sul ruolo della Commissione, sul ruolo del Parlamento, il ruolo del Consiglio, sarebbe limitante. Dobbiamo guardare come insieme possiamo affrontare le grandi sfide del presente e del futuro. La lotta al cambiamento climatico, ma combinarla con la tutela della natura imprenditoriale dell'europeo. Perché se ci sono 24 milioni di imprese piccole e medie in Europa, vuol dire che anche questa vocazione all'uomo Faber c'è in Europa. Quindi dobbiamo tenere conto anche di questo. Ecco un altro elemento in comune. Come c'è naturalmente un elemento comune storico, e non lo dico perché ho la sindrome del sacrestano, ma le comuni radici cristiane, giudaico-cristiane, sono parte della nostra identità europea, indipendentemente dal fatto di essere credenti o meno. Benedetto Croce diceva non possiamo non dirci cristiani, perché la nostra identità, la nostra cultura, come il diritto romano, è parte della nostra identità culturale, della gran parte dell'Europa. Ecco, ci sono talmente tante cose che ci uniscono. Siamo nella patria di Dante Alighieri, ma Dante Alighieri era solo fiorentino o era anche italiano? Era solo fiorentino e italiano o era anche europeo? La Divina Commedia non sarebbe stata tradotta in tante lingue se il suo pensiero andasse al di là, e d'altronde è stato uno fra i primi a parlare di Europa, anche da un punto di vista politico. Andremo a affrontare una volta che fece un dibattito proprio su Dante europeista, con all'epoca era l'attuale presidente dell'ABI Antonio Patuelli. Lo facemmo a Ravenna perché lì è sepolto Dante, ma affrontammo questo tema. Ma le grandi cattedrali sono patrimonio di ogni singola nazione o sono patrimonio di tutta l'Europa? Cervantes è patrimonio spagnolo o patrimonio di tutti quanti noi? Mozart è patrimonio di chi è di madrelingua tedesca o è patrimonio di tutti? Beethoven è patrimonio di chi è di madrelingua tedesca o è di tutti? Verdi è patrimonio solo italiano o è patrimonio di tutti? Potremmo stare qui ad elencare decine e decine di artisti, di poeti, di scrittori, di geni. Enrico Fermi, grande scienziato, è patrimonio solo italiano o è patrimonio anche europeo? Madame Curie è patrimonio francofono o è un patrimonio di tutti? Ecco, vedete quanta storia, quanta identità comune c'è. Non dovrei citare per ogni paese una figura importante, ma è come se l'avessi fatto. Ecco, vedete, questo è la nostra identità. Siamo l'unico continente al mondo, perché contano anche i valori, dove non esiste la pena di morte. Siamo l'unico continente al mondo dove neanche le istituzioni più forti possono arrogarsi il diritto di togliere la vita ad un essere umano, anche al peggiore, perché anche il peggiore, fino al momento in cui lascia questa vita, ha il diritto di cambiare e di redimersi. Anche il peggiore può essere utile alla società. Vedete, significa che c'è un'identità valoriale, il rispetto della persona, la centralità della persona. Questa è l'Europa nella quale io credo, nella quale credo sia giusto credere, credo che questi valori noi abbiamo il dovere di trasmetterli ai nostri figli. Non è solo politica, è anche un'identità. Io insisto in questo momento di sbandamento generale. Fare riferimento ai valori è sempre importante, perché una società, se cade a causa di fattori esterni, se crede in valori profondi, è in grado di rialzarsi, come ciascuno di noi, perché quello che hai dentro è più forte anche dei muscoli che hai, perché la testa, le idee, i valori. La Divina Commedia non è soltanto la fotografia dell'inferno, del purgatorio e del paradiso, è un modo di concepire la vita, ispirata a valori. Dante Alighieri si ispirava a valori. Vedete, questo cito Dante perché a me piace il Dante europeo, quindi in questa sede voglio ricordare proprio questo aspetto. Potremmo parlare ore e ore, quindi concludo questo intervento sullo Stato dell'Unione. Io sono ottimista e guardo con speranza al futuro, proprio perché c'è questo idem sentire, c'è questo sottofondo comune di millenni di storia. Voglio ricordare un episodio che è emblematico e lo feci celebrando, all'epoca ero Presidente del Parlamento europeo, la commemorazione della firma del Trattato di Roma. Era la storia del primo imperatore ispanico, Traiano, figlio di un senatore ispanico. E lui chiese al padre, dice, ma può un ispanico diventare imperatore romano? Il padre gli rispose, sì, perché Roma non è una città. Roma sono le sue leggi, Roma sono le sue infrastrutture, Roma è la sua storia, Roma è un grande ideale. Ecco, l'Europa è un po' la stessa cosa. Non sono soltanto gli uffici di Bruxelles, non è soltanto la burocrazia per quanto utile. L'Europa è un grande ideale perché è la nostra identità, è la nostra storia. E noi italiani che abbiamo l'onore e la fortuna di essere eredi di grandi civiltà, custodi della memoria di secoli. E ricordavamo con il sindaco le origini di Fiesole, pre-romaniche. E quindi anche quelle antiche civiltà, etrusche, fenici, sono parte di questa nostra identità. Io credo che valga la pena, sentendoci tutti europei, di continuare a lavorare per un'Europa politicamente più forte, che rappresenti anche la nostra identità, che sia pronta ad ospitare, come d'altronde faceva l'antica Roma, proprio perché era forte della propria identità. Chi ha un'identità debole chiude le porte e si spaventa di tutto. E questo ve lo dice uno che è figlio di militare, la prima cosa che gli è stata insegnata a casa era amare e rispettare la bandiera. Quindi la mia italianità certamente è fortissima, ma proprio perché sono italiano e sono fiero di essere italiano, mi sento un cittadino europeo, perché il cuore della nostra civiltà, della nostra identità, alberga anche nella mia patria, come alberga nella patria di tanti di voi. Ecco, questo significa, secondo me, essere europei. Se crediamo in tutte queste cose, allora possiamo dirci ottimisti. Grazie.
domande. Beatrice, le domande se a posto. Okay, good morning and welcome to this session of the State of the Union. And today the topic we're going to talk about is about the digital transition. The title, I think, says quite a lot, is a human-centric digital transition, innovation and inclusiveness. And so what we're going to talk about in this session with this panel introduced to you very soon, we're going to talk about what I think in my view is maybe the most important transition at the moment, is a digital one. Digital obviously has an impact on the life of everybody, from companies to individuals, and is also posing a series of, let's say, issues or threats or dilemmas, let's call it dilemmas, it's a kind of common word at the moment, on what is the right way to digitalize and to go about also to adapting our way of living. We have a lot of examples around us, our business models to this revolution is happening right now, and also what is going to happen in terms of regulation and policies. That's why we Post Italiani organized this panel. I'd like to thank the Institute for hosting us again this year, because for us it's a great opportunity to have an open discussion with our colleagues and on a topic. And I will start with a little example, and then we'll introduce the panelists that really struck me. I was recently, if you know, obviously, I take my examples of things in life, my daughters and taxi drivers in Rome. And I recently was in a taxi in Rome, and I know when you pay, they give you a pad with the numbers to pay the card. In innovation now, they scramble the numbers. So the numbers are not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, but every time the app scrambles the numbers. So if you don't know your PIN number, you're not able to rebuild it. Pretty much, you need to know your number. So I asked the taxi driver, I'm sure for old people this is a problem. And the taxi driver told me, no, it's the young people, they have a problem with that. It's not the old people. Because the old people, they know the PIN number. Where the young people, they don't, they just follow the track. They say 1, 2, 3, and they follow the number to create their own PIN. So this was interesting because I see associated to what we're going to discuss today, because we often think about the digital divide or digital transition as associated, and we're going to talk also about it, to the older generations. They have to adapt to something. In reality, the speed on which everything is happening, I think is posing us also more profound questions. First is how also all the generations, all the parts of society, they're adapting to what I define anthropological transition more than digital. It's really anthropological because we're really changing a lot of things. We're going to hopefully to speak also a bit about what is happening around ChatGPT, because it's another aspect. Again, it's another acceleration of technology. So when we talk about human-centric digital transition, I think we're mostly talking about how we adapt to the speed of change that is happening around us, to the point that sometimes even our own technologies that we believe they should enable us, for example, in the case of the pad security, is creating a problem for other people that have a different habit on how to remember the PIN number. Just a little example, but I think it's very revealing on the challenges we have ahead. And also, and this is our starting point, is the declaration, the starting point is the declaration on European digital rights and principles, because I think it's really pinning down a series of core elements of what we believe in Europe, because we are a European Institute, and we are all Europeans, Europe digital transition should be. So I'm very happy to have with me to talk about these aspects. We're going to follow the 6 principles in our discussion. So we'll ask questions to the other speakers following the 6 principles of the declaration, as that I found is towering in the office of Filomena in Brussels. It's a huge 8.0, I think, version of the declaration. Yeah. And so together with me, I have as a co-moderator Anna Renata Bizakiewicz, and from the European Institute. We also have as a speaker, starting from my left, Beatrice Covassi, she is a member of the European Parliament, and she also have a long career on the European Commission, on diplomacy European Commission. The last post, I think, was in London, following Brexit. So
digital affairs.
Digital affairs around Brexit, so quite a big role. And then we have Barbara Navarro, Head of Research public policy and institutional relations for Santander, and previously she worked for many years for Google in Asia. So again, another, so we have the legislator and the big financial global company. Vladimiro Ceci, head of strategic marketing, head of staff for Poste Italiane, which again has a long experience also in CDP as a chief risk officer of other institutions, so, and is also a colleague in Poste Italiane, so we'll provide a perspective of our company. Already presented Anna, and then we have Filomena Quirico, that she's at the DG Connect, the director of DG Connect, that she's following pretty much all the topics we're going to talk today. So digital euro, and also digital identity. So I would like to start the discussion, obviously, starting from our first point. So starting from the principle of the European Declaration of putting people at the center, solidarity and inclusion. So I think the key two aspects is why we call the session human-centric. The Commission and the Parliament, the European Union decided that digital transformation is about humans, it's about people, it's about society. So it's about people, so individuals, and also it's about solidarity, so how everybody can be taken on this journey through digitalization. So I think I would like to ask my initial question, what is the state of the art at the moment in Europe in relation to digital and also analogic versus analogical rights, and how social cohesion is read, and what is the approach of the European Commission or the European institutions?
Thanks very much. Thanks to all of you for being here today. Thanks for inviting me to this very interesting discussion. I have to say, I had less luck maybe in my taxi experiences, because actually I had to come from the airport yesterday night. I encountered a self-declared Eurosceptical taxi driver. So when he heard I was coming to this event, so he was not impressed. But I didn't have to use any PIN code because he took cash. So that's the inclusive aspect of still being able to use cash and digital means, online and offline means, let's say. As Cosimo just said, we have adopted, actually, it was at the end of last year, it was signed by the highest levels in the 3 European institutions, the Declaration of the Right and Principles for the Digital Decade. Now, a declaration, what is it for? Why is it needed? I will be wasting time. These are all questions that have been asked when we actually came up with this idea. But this is something that we considered at the time as a constitutional, and with the commissioners that backed it up, as a quasi-constitutional moment for Europe. In which way? Now, Cosimo said it very clearly, the digital transition, digital transformation is taking place, is transforming our societies in depth. And what is really needed at this point in time, what we felt, is on the one hand, awareness of the changes. And on the other hand, not passive acceptance of whatever was coming up, or whatever the impact of those changes, but reaffirmation of the centrality of the individual and of the rights, the protections, all what is important, what belongs to the European values, that has to be reflected online, taking into account the specificities and the evolution that was coming up in the digital transformation. So this is at the basis of the reasoning that led the Commission to propose the signature of such a declaration. Now, this declaration is not a legal instrument. It's called the Declaration of Rights and Principles. It enshrines both rights which are already there, the right to privacy, protection of consumers, protection of workers. These are all there, and they are not touched. They are only restated. Plus principles, and that's maybe the most important part of it, because it says, it gives a sense of the vision of where we see at all levels, because the Parliament was involved, the Member States were involved in this discussion, where we want to see Europe in the digital decade, so between now or a couple of years ago and 2030. So this is the sense of the effort that was put into this, and we will never be tired of repeating. The main element of this is, and it's I think at the very beginning of the preamble, is people at the center of it. So it's yes, Europe is about investments. Yes, Europe is about regulation, and that's where everybody thinks what everybody thinks about Brussels. At the same time, what does it mean in concrete for people? And it was also a conscious effort to try to write it in a way that would be even understandable for people beyond the bureaucrats or the lawyers or the policymakers around this field. So inclusion, indeed, it starts with inclusion. But inclusion in the declaration covers different aspects, because inclusion is about infrastructure. Inclusion, so everybody has to have access to digital technologies, digital infrastructures, digital services. There is an important element also of digitization of public administration, digitization of service, and the ability of using the technologies. And that's the skills point that also Cosimo was referring to. And we are not doing great at the moment. So this is an important field where we also need to invest in forming people, in training them, in making each of us used to the new technologies, whether we need to get out of the habit of using a pattern, or we need to get familiarity, if we are a bit older, with ChatGPT rather than TikTok. In my work, I have to learn to use TikTok. I'm not really a user at the moment, to be honest. So I don't want to take too much time because we will have an interesting discussion. But this point I wanted to make, it's just what does it mean, the digital transformation for people? It means many things, and it for the benefit and for the purpose of making life of people better and embedding the values that we all dear in Europe.
Thank you very much. I liked a lot the concept of the declaration being like a quasi-constitutional document. And from constitution documents, they come rights and obligations. So I would like to now to introduce Vladimiro Ceci from Poste Italiane, because Poste Italiane, as you know, is like, let's call it, we define ourselves like a platform on a network company. In reality, the company is absolving the universal service in Italy in terms of postal services, but also has a quite extensive network in the country. So I would like to ask him how Poste, as an example, is bridging the mandate, because the mandate obviously provides universal service. Digital is becoming itself a form, an universal service at some level, and also how digital transformation is delivered by the company, and also how the transformations are helping to close what we define the digital divide.
Thank you, Cosimo. Thank you, everybody, for being here. And so I would start from your last point. How do we use technology in Poste Italiane? So in a nutshell, the way we use it is to make life easier for both for customers and for our employees. It's used for increasing productivity, for learn fast. All these instruments we are talking about today allow us to learn fast, and also to enhance and improve our skills. So it's sort of a armor powering our skills. So if we talk marketing-wise, which is my present job, so we don't simply reach out to our customers digitally. We do it omni-channel, which means that we have a relational model. So we have people in the postal network that are face-to-face with our customers, and we supply the digital option as a complementary option. Technology helps us to discover and unveil the potential of our customers, but also to figure out which is the best next offer when we approach the customer. So it's not a way to switch from a human to human approach, a traditional approach, with a machine to human approach. But the machine-to-human approach is a sort of a bridge to the human-to-human approach. So what we do is, if you are already a client, what we do, we use the digital to improve your experience. So that's the way. But our strength is the network, the physical network. So Poste lives an apparent contradiction because we are the most physical firm in Italy. You know, Poste is the biggest employer in Italy. Almost 130,000 people work for Poste. At the same time, we are a sort of a digital champion. And in this, role, we are helping the country to develop the digitalization process. So just to give you an idea of how we do this, consider the prepaid Poste Pay card. It's thanks to this very popular Poste Pay card, which you know, we have 20 million customers, that e-commerce could spread in the country, for instance. And also in the post office, we had the first digital and financial education courses. And it is in the post office that senior citizens learn how to configure their apps on their mobile phones. Another example is Italy has a very good position with respect to other countries regarding the dissemination of the digital identities. It's called the SPID. It's a public system of digital identity. Consider that 80% of the Italian digital identities have been released by Poste Italiane, 80% of which at the post office. So in that occasion, with this experience, we learned that there is no digital without a physical presence, at least now, here, okay? Aware of this, what we did was, during the pandemic, maybe you remember the tragedy, and especially there was a region, Lombardy, which was severely hit. And they couldn't fix the massive vaccination digital platform problem. They had a problem. So aware of the fact that there is no digital without physical presence, what Poste did was to propose to give help. In few weeks, Poste Italiane set up a digital platform, digital booking platform, so you could book in Lombardy and other 7 regions your vaccine from Poste Italiane platform, and also from the postman at home or at post office. And our people were also helping in the planning and configuration of the vaccination hubs. And the platform was used also for the real-time tracking of the vaccines all over Italy. So this is a very good example of what that phygital means. Physical and digital. So no one knew at the time what Poste Italiane had under the bonnet. Poste Italiane had made, before the pandemic, massive investments in technology and resources. And this was a way, so this very swift intervention by Poste Italiane revealed the strategy that the company was pursuing. And Poste was, in fact, acting as a complementary civil protection in Italy. And this is what we mean when we say, no leave anyone behind.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I would like to move now to another topic, which is very much related to what we have said so far. So, data. We have often heard that data is seen as a competitive advantage and asset that should be defended. But we should not forget that data or data-built companies have existed prior to digitalization. What is the difference? We could compare benefits deriving from data to network effects, except that benefits from network effects can last longer and can be more powerful. So what is the difference? It's not only having data, but also enabling data learning. And not all the companies can do that, or not actually many companies do that so far. And given the big competitive advantage that data offers, I would like to address my first question to Barbara Navarro from Santander and ask how digital data is shaping the business of big financial institutions like Santander, and whether you could also, given your experience in other jurisdictions, in particular in Asia with Google, whether you could tell us whether there are any differences in approaches to using data as drivers for socio-political reasons in these two jurisdictions.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, and thanks for inviting me to be here today. Well, data, I mean, in my old days in Google, that was our main topic, right? Talking about data. And data, as we know, is not new. I mean, companies have had data for very long, right? Since the beginning. What is new is the capacity to use that data in a very efficient way because we have the technology that is able to store and to manage data fast and as I said, efficiently. I think that we have said before, you know, data has changed users' life, our life. I mean, most of the things that we do daily are driven by data, right? How we choose a restaurant, how we choose our holidays. I mean, I don't want to say how we choose our friends, but you know, we do a little bit of research and we see what is out there when we go for a meeting, I mean, et cetera, and has changed the way that companies behave, right? And I think for good, I'm a very big fan of data when it's used in the right way, and I'm a very big fan because I think that it for companies that are very customer-centric, it really helps to serve your customers better. It really helps to launch products and services faster. It really helps to do cost reduction in a way, in the best way possible. It really helps you to make decisions that are more accurate and are better. Then there is a lot of benefits and a lot of positive things coming from data. But you know, there is a big debate around data. I mean, we know that it's not just all beautiful as I'm painting data. There is a lot of responsibilities when we talk about data. And as companies, we have these responsibilities, right? In the same way that users has responsibility on their own data, in the same way that, you know, policymakers has responsibilities and government. What are our responsibilities? I think I will say, you know, keeping privacy safe, it's super important. Security, it's extremely important. And it's, as we know, as we all go digital, as we all make decisions based on data, it's even more important to keep, you know, privacy secure and security under control, which, as we know, and I think that you mentioned, I mean, the amount of investment that needs to be done to ensure that, you know, data is secure is very important. But let me, and I'm gonna jump a little bit here about countries, right? And probably I will bring a little bit my experience in APAC. You know, I have been 14 years in Google and the first 7 in Europe and the last 8 in Asia, right? When in Europe we were talking about GDPR, privacy, in Asia they were talking about data as a driver of innovation. It was a completely different conversation, right? And still these days, the conversation that, especially, you know, and I will bring here one topic that is also relevant, that is fragmentation, right? Data works very well, very good in non-fragmented markets. That's why in Asia they are very focused on that, because the population is huge. You have China, and that's why it's so advanced in technology as AI. You have the US, same thing. You have India, right? But approach that countries can have to data, it's very different from country to country. Let me throw other trends that I have observed during my experience. It's opening data, opening public data, which can bring enormous amount of innovation and can bring, a startup and entrepreneurship to flourish, right? Let's talk about opening cross-sectoral data. That is so important. I know that there is a lot of discussion about open finance, but I will say open more than that finance data. Let me talk about cross-border data flows versus data localization. A huge debate these days in APAC that is going more into a data localization space than the other way around. I mean, putting some countries on a side, right? And this is all very important. Then I will finish, saying a bigger statement, that is the way that countries approach data. It's critical for business, right? It's critical for how far a business ecosystem can really develop, right? And again, let me repeat what I said about non-fragmented regions. Why I'm saying this is because Europe has enormous capacity to really use European data for good, but sometimes, it's too fragmented to make the most of that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Barbara. Now I would like to ask a question to Filomena. So Cosimo has mentioned earlier that our questions are related to the Declaration of Digital Rights, and the question about data is very much linked to the participation and freedom of choice. So as consumers and citizens, we participate in the digital economy by providing data. At the same time, we have just heard that we need a non-fragmented region in order to benefit from the scale of data that we have at our disposal. And in that context, I would like to ask, what is the European Commission view on digital data and digital services as part of the European strategic independent concept, which I think is relevant also for how we protect our fundamental values?
Thanks, Anna, and also to Barbara for very inspiring comments. It resonates a lot on also on the discussions that we are having at the Commission. Data is a big opportunity. It's a big opportunity for citizens. It's a big opportunity for companies. It's a big opportunity for financial institutions and for governments. It is also very much true that there is an issue with circulation of data that might be hindered by different preferences, different regulations. But I would like also to introduce here a distinction that has become more and more important recently between personal data and non-personal data. Sometimes it's not so easy to distinguish them, but what we have been seeing so far is the growth of the data economy based mostly on personal data, collection of personal data, use, processing, profiling based on personal data. And that's what the GDPR was trying to regulate, to make sure that as users we are not afraid of what is being done with our personal data. So it's the counterbalance to the opportunity to be reassured that this is actually safe, what is going on. But then non-personal data, this is what is generated by all the connected machines we have at home, from the alarm clock to the fridge to the, I think my washing machine is connected at the moment, although I didn't connect it, to be honest. And all that is the future cars, all of this is creating an environment, a massive environment of industrial or simply non-personal data that are even more a source of opportunity for business, for companies, and for citizens. I mean, one of my favorite examples of the futuristic way of looking at it, we are talking a lot about the metaverse, or virtual worlds, as we prefer to call them in Brussels, where the physical and the digital become nearly undistinguishable, where the avatar of a doctor can assess the state of health of my digital twin, which exists only in the metaverse, but is so precise that the doctor can make a diagnosis on my state of health and give me prescriptions, and I can, my digital twin can already order the medicines online and pay with the digital euro that is also coming. Now, this sounds quite like a fun science fiction scenario, but it's not that far away. All of the ingredients of this scenario are already being built. The digital Europe is being created. The digital twins are being regulated. One of the points that Barbara Navarro mentioned, the possibility for data to be collected and to circulate freely and to be handled by perhaps data brokers for the companies who don't know, because they're too small, how to make use of the data. This is all part of the data strategy that is being set out already a few years ago, at least in the objectives by the Commission, and particularly it was an intuition from Commissioner Breton as soon as he arrived, when he said, like, nobody's talking about data, we have to talk about data. And this is to say, and to link also rapidly to your second point, this is also part of what we consider the strategic autonomy. I wouldn't call it independence so much, and it's actually one of the most misunderstood concepts in the discussions in the European bubble, because it's something that is often being perceived as a quest for protectionism or autarky. Europe is not autarchist and will never be. Europe needs partners. Europe is happy to have an outlook on the world. At the same time, what we experienced in the past is volatile international environments that put the safety and the protection of our citizens at risk. And here I'm talking citizens, not industry, because protectionism is always seen as something that is done to protect industries, is to protect citizens. When our partners in the US said, sorry, for vaccines ingredients, America first, when our companies who established themselves in China could not send to Europe the masks that they were producing because China had the policy of China first, then how do you protect your citizen? And that's the nuts and bolts of the strategic autonomy, to be able to resist this type of situations while being completely open and completely transparent with our partners. And all these regulations that I mentioned, whether it's the digital identity actually or the others, these are also part of the landscape to say not only we are open to the world, but the world can come in as long as they respect our rules and values. And then I hit back to the declaration that I mentioned at the beginning.
And we take it from there, and also to introduce Alberto Cicovassi, because I think Hirsch is a great, important task in a parliament. She's co-rapporteur on cybersecurity, and also, as I said before, also the experience she has on digital services also in the past.
And infrastructure.
Infrastructure, sì.
Right.
Yeah. I think with Cicovassi, I would like to touch the point about safety and cybersecurity, because I think it's a very important topic. Also, you see also these days what is happening around the world. You know, cyberspace is being like a weapon of war. Sometimes they call it the weaponization of the cyberspace. So I think it's a very important topic, and also for the citizens, and also from a strategic point of view. So I will ask, following the principles in relation to cybersecurity and cyberspace, I would like to ask, first of all, how the Parliament now is looking at these topics and what is on the plate of her agenda on the topic of digital and also the cyberspace.
Thank you very much, Cosimo, and thank you very much to Poste Italiane for organizing this very interesting panel. It is a pleasure to be back. I was here last year on a digital panel as well, and but last year I was a diplomat in London for the EU, so I was doing digital affairs from a completely different perspective, and it is for me a special, satisfaction, let's say, to be here as a politician, because I give another twist and another perspective, of course, to this discourse. And I love the title, of our panel, because this could be really the subtitle of what we're trying to do at the moment, on this file. So human-centric digital transition, holding together innovation and inclusiveness. I could stop here. It could be the slogan for an electoral campaign. Could be really the point that I think the challenge that we have ahead, because as I often say, this digital transition was born as twins. But then one of the twins, the digital one, was a bit left, at home, at least in political terms, saying that the twin transition, all the environmental part, and I'm also a member of the Environment Committee, went ahead. We have a lot of political attention on Fit for 55. We have a lot of, and rightly so, political attention on climate change. But when it comes to digital, although we all know, and I see some also friends here in this room, who have been following digital affairs for many years, so we all know how important it is. We all know how mind-blowing it is at the moment to have these transformations that speakers before me, have so well described. I don't think it's still, it's yet on the political agenda, not so much. It is not the main issue the government is discussion, or the governments in Europe, but certainly also in this country, and it's not considered as sexist as other topics still, in the European Parliament, if I can say so. So there is a lot of attention. I think there should be more political attention. And at the moment, I'm dealing with this piece of legislation as a shadow rapporteur, which you may have heard of, which is cybersecurity of objects. Filomena was mentioning, some of the connected objects and the increased number of these objects, in the future. And we are dealing with what is really at the heart of the legislator dilemma, because you have a need to do a horizontal legislation. So it's cybersecurity meant horizontally, which goes from agricultural machinery, to the fridge and the connected objects. So it's huge. At the same time, you have to, to ensure security of these objects, because all objects which are connected online, of course, can have vulnerabilities. So the safety and the security go together, to go back to your question. It's difficult to think in the future, about safety without security of a digital element, disconnected from the digital element. But we don't want to kill innovation, of course, and we want the whole of the European interconnected objects landscape to be a more secure place in the future. So big dilemmas, big questions, like span, duration of lifetime of connected objects. For how long can you guarantee actually, to have the patches or to have the updates in security? How long I can expect, to be considered safe? How to exactly address sectors which have little to do, with cyber normally. Like I mentioned, the agricultural, world, but also a lot of plant automation, which now suddenly has some internet connections. So there's a lot of regulators' dilemmas there, and I think it would be very important to hear your views on this. And of course, and I will stop here, it's very important always to keep, an ecosystem connected. So the industry, the public service, the public-private partnerships, because as we go along down this way of digitization, of course, we have a lot of known unknowns, but we have a lot of unknown unknowns. So we go towards the unknown, and we don't know how to face it. And the best way to face it is jointly, by keeping all the actors involved and all the stakeholders together. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Beatrice, for your answer, and also for the work you're doing in the Parliament on that aspect. Now we'd like to move in the last. I would like to leave a last round of questions. I would like you to answer very quickly, so we can have at least 12, 15 minutes for our final Q&A, because I also want to hear some questions. So.
Okay. Thank you, Cosimo. So we have heard from Beatrice and Filomena that the European Commission is doing its best to...
Parliament. And the Parliament.
European Union in general, yes, European Union in general, to ensure that we can benefit from what digitalization offers in a safe, secure, and inclusive way. But we won't be able to really benefit if we do not resolve a major issue, which is a climate change. And what climate change and digitalization have in common is that they know no borders. And that means that there can be no me first policy, because it's a really global challenge and we have to find those issues globally. And in the context of sustainability, we often hear about energy consumption that digitalization is causing, but of course, digitalization is also helping to save energy in other industries. So I would like to ask Vladimiro Cecchi about Poste's experience in this area, and in particular, how do you embrace the link between digital and green transition, and how do you link this also to the social inclusion?
Yes, thank you. Let's say that in the spirit of inclusion and cohesion we were talking about before, Poste recently has launched the Polis project. The Polis project is a public-private partnership between Poste Italiane and the Italian government. The Italian government put on the place 800 million with the National Complementary Plan to the European Recovery and Resilience Facility. To this 800 million, Poste added almost 400 million from its own balance sheet. So Poste put €1 for every €2 financed by the state. So what is the Polis project? Polis involves 7,000 post offices in the internal areas. So municipalities with less than 15,000 inhabitants. So all 100% of the so-called white areas are involved in the Polis project. So what we do is, in this area, in these small municipalities, it's very difficult to reach the urban areas, and here you have also a saving of fuel, you have less pollution if you concentrate all the services in one single point. So what Poste does is offering one single digit access to public administration services from the post office. So what we do is we bring the fiber connection to these municipalities, and we make it possible to have all the services from this one single point. And this way, so you solve an environmental problem, and you solve at the same time an availability, an access problem for the public services.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And I would like to ask to Barbara, again, on interest of time, I would like to be interested in how Santander is looking at the other aspect of sustainability, ESG. It is about social cohesion and also financial inclusion, and also this experience also how data is used to improve the financial inclusion aspects.
Thank you. Very quickly to ensure that we have time for questions, but when we talk about financial inclusion, let me start with the digital divide, right? And I have checked some numbers. Apologies if I don't get this exactly where it is, but we are around 8 billion people in the world, and I think that 5 billion are connected, right? And this is about the next billion users. How we are gonna bring online those 3 billion that are still offline. But digital divide is not just about connected or not connected, right? There is other divides that are critical, especially for financial services and for financial inclusion, right? And let me just bring a few a few gaps that we need to solve. And one of them, you mentioned it the other way around. I mean, there is a divide between old and young, right? And here, from a bank perspective, we know well what that means, but there is a gap between rural and urban, which is a very big gap too. And there is a gap between developed and emerging, right? And this is very connected with data too, right? Because there is a gap between those that have access to data and can use technology to make the most of it, or those that have data but don't have access to data and don't have the technology. Then there is different ways to talk about digital divide or gaps or divide these days. From a finance institution or finance sector point of view, I mean, let me just remember, and I'm sure that you have this in mind, is I think that finance sector was one of the first ones that went online, right? Even before we talk about e-commerce, we were already online. And part is because it plays a role related with financial inclusion, right? But as banks, we need to have one leg offline and one leg online because, you know, still people that have not access to technology. Then in that sense, this is something that we keep in mind. Another piece of financial inclusion is education. I think that we talk a little bit about education, but this is critical, right? If you need to educate people on how to use technology, but also you need to educate people how they can use physical branches if they don't know how to do it, like the young kids that they don't know how to enter the PIN. And I think that we like to see ourselves as a bank as a digital bank with branches. Then I think that when we talk about financial inclusion, it's a lot of being in these two worlds, right? It's not just about being 100% digital, it's about the capacity to be physical and digital to really, and just let me finish saying that data, mobile apps have brought a lot for financial inclusion to, right? And we have launched a project that it's, you know, people that is unbanked, the capacity to be banked through a mobile app. And I think that this is important, right? We should not see financial inclusion from maybe a traditional perspective. We need to be creative on how we can bring people, you know, in a banking environment without being the traditional way as we, you know, see it, like opening a bank account in a physical bank. Then, yeah, this is it.
Thank you very much. I would like to ask a last question to Beatrice, because it's important, because there are two aspects I'm very interested to have her views. One is about how all the policy work and what is happening around then can be supported, influenced, and how is public participation having a role on what you're doing, because at the end, this has an impact on society, also how also you inform your views on a legislative process, so bottom-up or working groups. I think both Parliament and Commission, all the European institutions are very good at involving the society and also companies. Another one is the other topic, as I think is relevant, is the capacity to be fast to legislate changes, because I think ChatGPT is a good example. The last examples of many cases in which technology is so fast that it's very difficult to understand, A, what is happening, because whatever happens then really happens, and you have to deal with that. And also so how we can then accelerate the capacity to go from the event to the legislation and then to support the citizens. So I would like to close on that, and then we move to
very, very quickly, because I mean, I underscore, I mean, what I mentioned briefly before, the fact that it is really important to have an ecosystem which keeps, you know, together public, private, you know, stakeholders and the more general public when dealing with this complex and futuristic also, you know, scenarios. Which is linked to speed, because of course you cannot react timely if you are not able to get from the real world, you know, a constant flux of data. Let's put it like that. But data which goes into policy making and legislation. I think, you know, there are two ways. One is, of course, having public hearings, for instance, on each piece of legislation I'm working on. Also, the next one will be this one already controversial about the gigabit infrastructure, so very high speed, you know, data infrastructure. I always have public hearings, which are really public in the sense I stream them, you know, everybody can see, everybody's around the table, you know, 50, 60 representatives, not only of business, but also consumers, etc. Whoever wants to come, the parliament is open, you know, it's a public place. Second thing, of course, you can write. You know, people forget thinking about policy, sometimes forget the simple things, you know. Everyone can write an MEP, everyone can write, also to the Commission, of course, but I mean, I always say when I meet people, write to me, you have a concern, you know, write to us. We are the elected ones, so you should really give us a bit of a hustle, huh? No, we are there to respond to the questions. And then, of course, I think, you know, Europe should not take the regulatory hype, but should be a front runner in an approach which is human-centric. In this, Europe is unique. And I think this, if you want digital humanism, I like to talk about digital humanism, that we have approach is a competitive advantage as well. So when we set the blueprint, when we are fast enough, when we are innovative enough, I think Europe can lead the game and not just be in a reactive position like saying, oh, there's a new development, I have to do this, oh, there's another one. Last thing that I think it would be important for next discussion is really thinking about, somebody spoke about universal service, thinking about what is the universal service function in the world of platforms and in the world of artificial intelligence. That's a big, big open question to me.
Thank you very much. I think you threw a lot of topics, a very interesting one, which will stay the hour, but we have lunch and we have questions. So we'd like to leave the last 10 minutes for people if you have any questions from the audience. There is a lady there. Please, the microphone. Are we also taking questions from the...
My name is Eva Lichtenberg. I'm a former MEP, and I was part during the Conference for the Future of Europe of the Civil Society Digital Cluster. And there was one point in the focus, which was accessibility, also for disabled persons. And what I found out also in own research was there's a lot of also public pages out that are not accessible, for example, for blind people. So is there any planning of the Commission just to have some legal instruments to get those at least public or big players platforms in accordance with accessibility, because this would offer a major chance for people that normally can't participate in public life so much. So there's a lack of planning and a lack of legal certainty and a lack of possibility to get it corrected. So is there any planning of having a regulation on that that would be binding and would give those disabled persons the possibility to correct those pages?
Thank you very much. So I think the question was addressed to the Commission.
I will say what I'm sure you follow the debate, so you are very much aware of the Web Accessibility Directive. So we have a piece of legislation already in place. Now it has worked up to a point, and it was addressed only to public services offered online. I have to say I witnessed myself in the last discussion on the Digital Services Act, in the Parliament discussion on whether that piece of legislation should include specific provisions in this regard. It was concluded that it was not the type of legislation that was adapted for that, but there is a commitment to actually to do it right. And this piece of legislation I mentioned on accessibility is currently under review. So indeed, for the big, especially for the biggest ones and for the public service, there is such an intention. And if you look at the fact that what I mentioned about the declaration, what I didn't say is what's the value, the legal value of the declaration, because it's not a legal document, but the declaration includes a reference also to people with disabilities, to minorities, and to everyone as in the part on inclusiveness. And this is a commitment by all legislators at European, at national level, to actually respect this principle when enacting new legislation. So it's the guidance that will drive and steer the future actions. But I can reassure you, it's in the pipeline. It's in not directly by my team, but it's been looked into.
Thank you very much. So I don't know if, in the interest of time, if you had any other questions on the audience, we can, please, front, first lane, first row.
So I'm Andre Gruber. I'm from a master's student at SDG, and I have a question for Poste Italiane, because so the conference theme is like building Europe, and you do wonderful work in Italy on digitalization. So now I'm wondering, what's hindering you of bringing this good stuff to the rest of the EU?
Well, I don't know if you want to answer.
You know, this is a very good point. Let's say that we can be a good example of an enterprise, a corporation, which is very close to the institutions, even because our history goes back to the foundation of the Italian state. So when we talk about the digitization or the digital transformation of Poste Italiane, you can imagine that you can apply, you have a projection of something similar to the Italian state. And if you project it widely, you can have a digital transformation of Europe. So you can work by examples. So this is the best answer I can give to you.
I think maybe I can add a little point is that obviously the horizon, I think I would like to believe that our horizon, though we are obviously a very Italian company, our horizon is Europe, because everything, as you can see from the people around this table, is happening more and more, not locally, but we need to have the ambition, aspiration to be European citizens also. Provide a good example, understanding what is happening on the debate, because whatever happens in Brussels, Frankfurt, or the big capitals of Europe, Luxembourg, as well, then it becomes something is going to. So it's what I was asking before, Beatrice, this kind of debate between the periphery or the areas and the center. So it's very relevant for us. So any other questions? We're running a bit. Okay. So they're telling me we're going to close the session. I would like to thank all the speakers, all the people here, and also online for today. And yeah, thank you very much, and have a good lunch, I think. Thank you.
L'Europe ne se fera pas d'un coup, ni dans une construction d'ensemble. Elle se fera par des réalisations concrètes, créant d'abord une solidarité de fait.
My name is Lotta. I'm a third-year doctoral researcher at the Department of Political and Social Sciences. I identify myself as a first-generation academic. The EUI has a special initiative for those individuals who identify themselves as first-generation academics. In other words, that means that they grew up in families with parents or guardians who do not have a university degree. We know from some studies and also from academic life in general that first-generation academics might face some different obstacles or issues, situations throughout their academic careers that they don't know how to navigate with, or they might not have the support to ask from their parents. So the purpose of the initiative is inclusiveness and just to enhance diversity within the academia and provide support networks for these first-generation researchers. So the academic services facilitates kind of like networks or these other areas for exchange through, for example, putting together peer groups or they host meetings for first-generation researchers together with some more senior academics and professors included. The EUI Alumni Association also provides a mentoring program for those who identify as first-generation researchers. And that being said, equally, some of the professors and senior research fellows at the EUI have made themselves available for individual meetings. For myself, it's more of just kind of this network I know I can rely on. I can go to people, I have contacts if and when I face some obstacles or issues throughout my career. So it is not just for the moment while you're doing your PhD here, but of course you create these support and peer networks that then will last throughout your career. And I think just knowing that there is such a network I can rely on, but also at the same time that to see faces, okay, I'm not the only person who's going through these struggles sometimes. So I think that's just in general very encouraging.
Welcome to Villa La Fonte, home of the Department of Economics. This is the library here at Villa La Fonte, with desks available for first-year researchers on a first-time, first-served basis. Here, next door, are some of the working spaces allocated to PhD researchers in the second year and up. About 70 desks across 7 offices are dedicated to PhD researchers. About half of these desks are equipped with desktop computers. We're here on the terrace of Villa La Fonte, overlooking the gardens. This is a great place for lunch or a coffee. It can also be used as a workspace when you need some fresh air or for meetings. This is a place to bump into both researchers and faculty, and a place to be inspired.
Welcome to Villa Salviati, home to the Department of History. This is the Sala del Consiglio, here at Villa Salviati. It is used for seminars and conferences and can seat up to 150 people. The hall dates back to the 16th century and was originally used as a service area.
We are here on the second floor of Villa Salviati, which was originally an open loggia overlooking the courtyard. Today, this area houses 44 workspaces equipped with 17 computers. These spaces are dedicated to PhD researchers in the departments of history and law and are available on a first-come, first-served basis. This is where researchers can come for a quiet space. It's a great place to work when you need to focus. Welcome to Villa Salviati, home to the Department of Law. We are here on the second floor of Villa Salviati, which was originally an open loggia overlooking the courtyard. Today, this area houses 44 workspaces equipped with 17 computers. These spaces are dedicated to PhD researchers in the departments of history and law and are available on a first-come, first-served basis. This is where researchers can come for a quiet space. It's a great place to work when you need to focus.
This is the Sala del Consiglio, here at Villa Salviati. It is used for seminars and conferences and can seat up to 150 people. The hall dates back to the 16th century and was originally used as a service area.
Welcome to the Badia Fiesolana, the seat of the European University Institute since 1976. The Badia, which dates back to the 12th century, houses the EUI Library, the Office of the President, the Central Administration, and the Department of Political and Social Sciences. We are here in the EUI Library, which houses a collection of more than 960,000 books, print and electronic. The collections, together with the services and the infrastructures, make this one of the most internationally recognized social science research libraries in Europe. Among the collections are books in 60 different languages. The library provides access to over 240 databases, as well as an extensive collection of full-text e-journals, e-books, and electronic working papers. There are also more than 170 workspaces available on a first-come, first-served basis. Last but not least, the library has the status of European Documentation Center, an official depository of EU publications and documents. This is the refettorio, one of the largest spaces here in the Badia, seating up to 200 people. The room is equipped with hybrid conferencing technology and sound diffusion. This is where many seminars, workshops, and lectures take place, as well as some of the high-level conferences hosted here at the EUI. During the Renaissance, this was the friar's refectory, where meals were taken in rigorous silence. The fresco depicts Christ fed by angels and was completed by Giovanni da San Giovanni in the 17th century. Here we are in the upper cloister of the Badia, which was originally an open loggia. Today, it is equipped with 28 working spaces, available on a first-come, first-served basis. Here you will also find access to 12 PCs and 24 screens. This is a great place to work. It is quiet, and if you need a break, you can step out onto the upper loggia to get some fresh air and enjoy a beautiful view of Florence. Welcome to the Mensa, the dining hall of the Badia, shared by researchers, faculty, staff, and visitors. Lunch is served here from Monday to Friday. You can choose from various menu options, including vegetarian dishes, and there is always a dessert. This is a great place to connect with fellow colleagues and friends. You can also take your lunch out on the terrace and enjoy a panoramic view of Florence.
Main impact that Florence had on me is that I now think in a more African-oriented way. Before, I would do my day-to-day work and always think Kenya, Kenya, Kenya. Now I have that perspective of thinking, it's one thing to do something for your country, but it's a whole other thing to do something for your continent.
In so many ways, it was a life-changing experience in terms of how it changed the way I view things in relation to policy issues and governance issues and so on. But I think what kind of stood out the most to me was the idea of the transnationality of things. How whenever you think about anything, you need to think about the transnational aspects of it. And that was obviously because of how the whole idea of the School of Transnational Governance was built on that concept and that idea. And it has honestly really helped me moving forward in terms of thinking about things, how everything that you do
has so many other, aspects to it beyond the very narrow aspect we usually kind of lock ourselves into.
Originally, I chose to do the PhD here because of the faculty. So there were 2-3 members of the faculty where I thought, okay, they might be a good fit research-wise. But then, in the end, I talked with a professor from back home who also did his PhD here, and in a sense, what I liked about what he told me is that it's a small institute. He told me about a very interactive type of environment with a lot of interaction between the faculty and the researchers, and which is actually true in the end, and they convinced me also of that here in the during the applications, and so I decided, okay, it might be a good fit for me. And then on top of all of that, of course, there's the city of Florence, which is it's a beautiful place to stay for 5 years and do your PhD.
EUI Economics Department is located in a beautiful, large Tuscan villa. We call it Villa La Fonte. It's like a second home. You get out of your home and you walk to your work, and that's another home. So our offices are located in this beautiful place, and then what makes it very special is we are all living in that big villa. Us, faculty members, and also our PhD students, and a few postdocs every year we have.
I think what's unique about the UI is really the fact that it's an institution that's only there to do research. So you feel it with the professors, you always have their ear, they're always there to listen to you because they have to work on their research, and the only other thing on their plate is essentially your research. And you also realize that with all your colleagues. So I think in a sense, this opportunity to be in the building with, say, 80 other PhD students that all are very active and you have a constant feedback on what you're doing is, I think, something that is, at least, of course, I don't have the counterfactual because I'm not attending another program, but what I heard from other programs is not as strong there. So, and I think this is something that you should not underestimate when you're thinking about where to do the PhD and how to really get a good thesis done.
In terms of the topics the faculty covers, is actually quite wide. We have a very, very strong macroeconomics group and very strong microtheory group, and similarly very strong applied micro group. The applied micro group covers a wide range of topics, from development economics, education, gender, labor economics, health, and more. So we cover quite a few good economics topics for our PhD students.
What is a bit non-standard, I would say, with respect to other PhD programs is what I already said, that it's a small department, so you're all in the same building with the whole faculty. So you meet your professors all the time. You meet them during lunch and for coffee breaks, and in a sense, you have always someone to talk to. So I think this creates a nice atmosphere to do research.
The supervision is very close, very hands-on. Although every professor, of course, they have their own styles, generally we interact. And what makes us really special is this close contact and the continuous feedback the PhD students receive from us, not only from us, but also their peers, because it's a close community and with a very positive culture. It's not just us they are limited to in terms of good feedback. It's also their peers, upper cohorts, lower cohorts, and the postdocs.
The student life at the UI is a bit like going back to high school, I'd say. So you start in a sense with a cohort of 20 people. You go through a first year where you all have to work a lot, so essentially you get to know everybody. It's super easy to get in touch with people. And this also is kind of fostered by the UI. So there's like a bunch of activities to do. There's, here is now, okay, we're shooting this in June. I don't know when it's, there's the Coppa Pavone coming up, which is a football tournament here EUI-wide. You can play basketball, you can do all types of activities, go to the cinema club, whatever. So it's not boring, it's very, very active, and I think it's a nice way to spend your time.
Another special side of EUI economics is its interdisciplinary approach to economics. Especially on the applied micro side, we have very close contact with SPS department, and we have very close contact with the history department. We do accomplish this via good working groups and joint conferences, and general informal talks with the faculty members. For example, myself, I'm running with an SBS faculty an experimental working group just for our PhD students, economics and SBS, and other PhD students, to give them feedback about their pre-analysis plans, like before they execute their research, how they should go about it, and similar issues. So there are good bridges across departments, especially from economics to social and political sciences here. So this is especially important. I'm underlining because I'm somebody who values interdisciplinary research a lot and do interdisciplinary research a lot, and we'd like to tell the students who want to apply to EUI that's so open to them in this environment.